Well, good evening, all you wonderful glider pilots, and thank you for joining us on a late edition of our webinar series. But we are kicking it off with a big one. Tonight, we have the world's greatest competition pilot ever. Sebastian Kawa is joining us. And just a little bit about Sebastian for those of you who may not know the name. He is the current world 15-meter champion. He is the current world 20-meter two-seat champion. He is the current world Grand Prix champion. He is a 15-time world champion. He holds 15 world championship titles in the world class, club class, standard class, 15-meter, and 20-meter classes. He is also a 6-time European championship title holder. So basically, what that means between Bruno, myself, and Sebastian, between the three of us, we hold 29 major world titles. And just to give you a hint, I don't hold one, and I don't think Bruno holds one either. Is that right, Bruno?
No, but it's great to have Sebastian here. Great to be
Hello,
here.
Thank
hello
you,
everybody.
Sebastian. And what I'd like to do right now, and yep, let's click on Bruno. You want to click on your camera? So also for
Not
those of you,
really.
I'll kick it on. For those of you who don't know, Sebastian is joining us from Taupo in New Zealand on the North Island, and he's flying in the national championships there. This I think you're in your ninth race day, so or eighth or ninth task day, yeah. So it's
Yes.
just unbelievable that Sebastian has agreed and been so gracious to take the time and energy and effort away from the flying this competition to spend an evening with us. So, Bruno, on
Hello,
behalf,
hello.
yeah,
Pleasure is mine. We have been
thank
flying
you,
together, but
thank you.
it was a practice day. Uh, we may explain it later because I'm flying every day with a different person here. This is a sort of consultancy on my side. And this is a special experience for me because this is a difficult area to fly. I don't know if you'd like to know more about this competition, but we have a lot of topics to go through. So maybe let's start it.
Yeah, let's
Perfect.
start it off. And just to let folks know, you're in listen only mode, but if you have a question that you'd like to ask the champion, the world champion, just type it in and hit return. And at the end, during our formal Q&A, we can lob those in if we have time. And Sebastian said he'd be happy to answer some questions. Hopefully, everyone's seeing the web cameras are on. You should be seeing a live feed of Sebastian from down under, and as
Mhm.
well as Bruno from the Great Salt Lake.
So look at the
Um,
difference between Sebastian and me. So he's in the sun, and look at this pasty white. So you're getting plenty of vitamin D. It looks like down there. So
This picture that you can see down there, it's a Sunday picture. It is actually taken in Duodiscus because we are flying here, so it's summer, nice weather. But for me, it's also a good experience flying in here in this competition because I have never seen so many convergences like here. The weather is not consistent. It's always demanding here. So we have a lot of influence from the coastlines, a lot of marine air coming in. There is a big lake, Taupo, just near the airfields. Also convergences from this lake. And you never know, flying under the cumulus trees, which side will be working in next 5 kilometers. So it makes you think. You have to guess and observe, and it's a really good exercise for everybody. As far as now, as you see, I'm flying every day with a different person, and we're leading. So it was altogether 9 to 10 people flying. And it proves that what's the most important is not the flying technique, because most of the time I'm just sitting in the glider, sometimes maybe trying to push to make the glider turn in the right direction, but I'm only advising, and as we are leading now, it proves that it's not that important how you fly, but it's most important where you fly, what is your time.
So think about how incredible that is. 9 or 10 different pilots. They're the ones doing the flying, yet you're well ahead in the competition. And so pretty impressive. By the way, just to let you know, I heard about the opportunity to fly with you. I called my wife. Can I do it? She said yes. And then so I was starting to inquire, and I found out that it sold out within 4 hours. And I was like 2 days later after the announcement. So it was long sold out. So I wish I was there with you, Sebastian, but it's fun to talk to you. Well, anything else about the competition you want to talk about, or should we just jump in? Because we've got a lot to go over tonight.
Yeah, let's go. Let's continue. Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. So the first part of this is we want to get a little bit more feel on what how you think and what kind of drives you. So one of the questions I have is, because you're the number one in the world, I'm sure that people all the time come to you and say, how do you do it? What makes you different than the other top pilots? What kind of answers do you give to them without sounding too conceited? But you've earned it. I mean, what makes you so successful?
I think there are two things, two main things. The one is I have a lot of fun flying gliders, and the second is I have been very successful from the beginning, and it is probably the way in how you train young pilots. Actually, I have become a sportsman before I started to fly. I've been sailing for 5-6 years since I was 9 years old, and quite successful in it. And I had a nice group of competitive people sailing with me. We had a real club with a real coach. We had the theory, exercises, and practice in sailing. And then we attended the competitions, and I started to be a competitor in that moment already. So I think motivated. If you want really to win, you will find a way how to do it. Gliding is great fun for me. I'm dedicated to the sport. I have fun flying with different people, sharing my experience, and I think this is the most important thing about me. And I'm trying also to be very precise in what I'm doing. If there is a cloud, I'm not flying just around it. I'm just aiming perfectly in the place where I would like to be. And if there is a speed indicated, I'm trying to be exact at this speed. So I'm trying to be as precise as it is possible. Maybe it's not that important as we have explained in the beginning, but I'm trying to squeeze the maximum in every moment.
Right. And as I've talked to other people about you, they keep coming back and saying it's consistency, and your dedication to the exactness and the consistency of it. So that's great. One of the things that you talk.
I think there's also some more things. We have also consultancy with psychologists in our. We have a nice team now. We have a good team in this moment. We are improving our team. We have now consultancy with psychologists. We are explaining problems about communication, and one of the most important things in flying in competitions is cooperation between two pilots. And it's crucial now. We have good experiences since I think it was 60s when we had the first couple flying together. And it is very good. It works.
Now, when you're saying we, I think your teammate is Lucas Grabowski. Is that correct?
In this moment, yeah, I flew with many people, but in this moment, since 3 years, since Benalla, we are flying the most important competitions together with Lucas. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess he was the Polish national champion last year, so he's seeing some success himself. So that's neat.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, he's very motivated as well, and I see that he wants to win and he wants the results. And I'm not sure if it would be possible to fly together longer, because as far as now I'm always in the lead and he comes in second. We have a cooperation. This is good for both of us, but at some moment it may change that Łukasz would like to be to fly solo, to go on his own way. So the couples, they usually burn out after a certain. So I think it's maybe the last season we fly together, and then we will have to change. Maybe he will move to a different class. I will move to a different class, and we will fly with somebody else. But it's really difficult to find somebody who is accepting the fact that not always he wins, but flying together we will have a.
Can I volunteer?
Mhm.
I'll be a volunteer. I'll be your next teammate. So there you go.
Okay.
The problem
That's
solved.
good. But the teammate, good teammate, it's also very important. So it's not only about the pilot himself, also the team and the teammate. And I think the best team in this moment is the French team. They are very well organized, perfectly. They have a very good coach. Eric Napoleon is doing a great job, and he is helpful all the time. And if you look at the organization, this is the team that everybody should look at and take advantage, copying it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, when we were talking earlier before this started, a lot of the tips that you would want to give people, you've actually already given in your book. So you have a book called Sky Full of Heat, and it's now been out for several years. And the first part of it I know talks a lot about your early life and the sailing and how cold you'd get while you were sailing. But then the second half of it is a lot about the techniques and tactics and some of your tips that help you to win. So I actually, I was just gonna say I've contacted many of the vendors that sell your book, and they do have it in stock. So I think it's definitely worth reading.
It's good, but actually I sold a lot of things, a lot of secrets that active competitor pilots should know in any book and to anybody, because there were some secrets about how find the lift. It's not only about how you thermal. It's not about how the cloud looks, and but it's much more detailed about how we actually in the competition do it. And I had a feeling that in one competition the weather was exactly as I have prescribed it in one of the cup chapters in this book. And I looked at what's going on, and to my surprise, not everybody was able to perform according as it was in the book, and they missed it. It was clear clue. The clue was in the book, and I won the day, but only several people could copy it. And I think I'm not afraid of sharing advices to people who then I will have to compete with. A good example of why we are doing it was in Omarama in 2006, in 2007 during the Grand Prix. We had to fly in very difficult terrain for people from overseas. Nobody knew this area before. And Ben Flowett and Terry Delord, they were sharing their experience. For a week or two, they were flying as a guide for us. And we had nice tasks, flying just sitting on their tails. And we've been learning the landscape. And this helped us to compete during the real competition on a even playground with them. And I think it was a good satisfaction for them. Maybe, unfortunately for Ben and Terry, people from Europe, they learned very quickly how to fly in this competition, and we managed to win it. But winning with somebody when you have such a big advantage, knowing the local landscape, would be not really satisfactory, I think, for this pilot. So we are sharing the knowledge. Yeah, I'm flying with the pilots, and I'm not afraid to share what I know, any advice, how I center thermals, how I choose clouds, how I choose the streets, which side I think it would work. It's so much in the sky. It's the weather is so complicated that it's never enough. You have to think all the time.
Gotcha. Well, you're talking about satisfaction, and so that leads me to the next question, and that is, if you look at the satisfaction of winning today versus, let's say, you 5 years ago,
Hmm.
is it still just as much of a thrill, or do you find that you've now won enough contests that you're now starting to look for the next thing? What motivates you still?
Sort of, but winning of each contest is something new, because it's never the same situation. So you have always to fight with something else. Now the competition has changed a lot because of the tracking system and the FLARM. It allows everybody to see where you are, what you're doing. It completely changed the situation. You cannot fly alone. You cannot hide before the start line, so everybody is flying more or less together. And after this, we had also to apply these tactics. Last year was the competition that we had to do it really, because I used to fly on my own to choose the right moment and not necessarily wait for other competitors and fly behind them. But in this situation, it's impossible, and I have to wait with them and fly together. In Ostrov last year, during the World Gliding Championships in 15-meter class, yes, I was unfortunate to have the glider in the last moments, and it turned out to be weak, and I had to change the glider, so I haven't been flown it. So that was a problem because we didn't practice before these competitions. For first 2 days, we were with Lukasz trying to get to know each other better, to communicate, and we didn't look exactly at tactics. But later on, after 2 or 3 days, we had to change it, because if we continue this, it would be a disaster. We would not be able to win. Everybody was waiting on the start line. They learned very quickly that we are choosing and we're leaving on the right moment. And they just let us to fly for 5 minutes, and they followed us. So it was a big gaggle flying together, and we would be always losers, yeah, in this sort of competition. So then we decided to stop it. There was 2 days actually, with the system of allocated start times. So you can start exactly at the, let's say it's 12 o'clock, and the next slot for start is 12:10. If you start 12:12, your start time is still 12:10. So when people try to follow you, let's say 5 minutes later, they don't get any advantage in time because of it was good for us because we were not losing points, but still everybody flew together.
Right, and there were some big
So
goggles during that.
yeah, it was a big gaggle, yeah, and maybe it was not the right day to first apply this system, because the weather was weak and we started late, and it was clear that the earlier we will go on task, the better it is. So in this situation, we didn't have to wait for anybody else to fly. We decided to with Lukasz to cross the start line, and everybody followed us. So it was one big gaggle. But the biggest gaggle was when they canceled this rule 2 days later, and all 3 classes, they flew together because it was blue. That was the biggest gaggle I have ever seen in a competition, like 120 gliders flying together. So it's not necessarily the start rule that makes the gaggling problem.
Yeah.
So I think actually the problem is with the tracking, and which is live, and each glider is dispersing the signal via FLARM, and it's very easy to decode. If it would be encrypted as it should be, because the FLARM is actually encrypted, but the encryption code is very weak, and anybody can decrypt it easily. Once the code has been broken, it's not any problem. You can put your own antenna and get the FLARM signal everywhere. So this is a problem now, and I think I would just like the situation, previous situation, where we didn't have a tracking live and Flarm dispersing the signal. It would be enough to have the competition mode or stealth mode. Unfortunately, it's very easy to decode it, and in this situation, I think we have to get rid of the Flarm in the competition.
Gotcha. Do you think that the powers that be with the FAI, that they're looking at it, they're working on it, or do you want to keep encouraging them? Do you think we're going to come up with a solution?
I think they see the problem. I think they see the problem. I think they initially nobody saw it because in the Grand Prix we have a tracking and it's not a problem. But this is a different situation. If you want to win the competition day, you have to be in front of everybody. In a normal competition, if you want to win the day, you may leave the start line 5 minutes later and come 1 minute after the first on the finish line, and you're the winner. Yeah. So this is completely different situation than, and live tracking is not applicable, and we shouldn't get rid. We want to fly a competition like it's now, so everybody flies the same, more or less the same task, more or less in the same conditions, because otherwise we could fly an OLC camp and everybody has to design his own route, fly his own task, and then it's fine. Yeah, the tracking doesn't change anything because nobody knows where you are going to. Yeah,
right.
But in this situation, if you want to fly the same route, we cannot go anymore like this.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Before we get into actual tactics, just a couple more quick questions about yourself personally. So look at the Kawa of 5 years ago and the Kawa today. Could the Kawa 5 years ago beat you today? Or do you think that you'd beat Sebastian 5 years ago every single time?
No, I would beat him, yeah.
Would you?
I'm still learning. I'm in the learning curve all the time. And for example, this competition is again another experience. And I think after this one, I can find the same weather patterns, but maybe in a smaller scale anywhere else. We have a lot of clouds here, so it's also a nice advantage looking at them and finding the thermals here. So it's the other thing is we have a better organized team. And we have learned a couple of new tricks. We have a better weather forecasts. We can talk also about it. And this forecasts are much better than previously. In the present competition, there should not be any landouts. The forecast is so precise that it would be 100% precision in setting the task that nobody has to land out.
So you're saying that the bad news is it's going to be even harder to beat you going forward. So that's fun.
I don't think so. There are teams that are good, but
everybody's improving.
The problem is I'm aging. Yeah, everybody is progressing in the age with the age, and at certain point I will have a lot of bad experiences also, and this will prevent me from taking too many risks, and that would be the moment that I will have a weaker performance. Although I will have a bigger experience, then I would probably slow down with during the race. So it's the competitors I'm flying with now, I'm not afraid of them. It's probably we will always be on the same level, and it will always be the situation. But they may come a new players. Yeah. For example, today I have flown with a very good pilot, and I think if he had a good chance to practice as much as he would like to, in maybe 3 years' time, he would beat me. Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. Last question before.
The secret to produce a very good competitor, it's not really a secret. You need to train 100 people. 20 of them will be top-notch pilots, and 5 of them will be able to win the competition in the highest level, so World and European Gliding Championships. So, but you need to train a lot of them.
Last question before we start getting into tactics, and that's all these new gliders that are coming on the scene. So, for example, you have the Ventus 3, the JS3, the AS33. Seems like everything's got a 3 in it, in the name.
Diana 3.
Yeah, then Diana 3, you have the GP gliders that are just coming out. So, how many of those have you had a chance to fly so far?
So far, I flew only with the Diana 3.
Diana 3. Okay. So, do you think that these next generation of gliders are going to be what's going to be required for you to be in the top 3 in the worlds, or do you think that the generation of the Ventus 2s or the ASG 29s could still have a chance of being in the top 3? Once enough of these gliders get out into the world. What do you think?
They are two different competitions. The Grand Prix is a different side of the story, and the normal competitions is the other side. This year I flew with the SG29 with the 50-meter last year, recent season, and with a good success. It's not that important to have a very good glider for the classic competition. You can do as well with the if we had a special competition with a very strong days, probably the JS3 with a bigger wing loading would not be possible to beat this glider. But I think in moderate conditions, any pilot, any glider can win. So it's not that big difference between those new gliders in normal competitions, but the Grand Prix is a different story. Usually in the Grand Prix, we have a very long final glide. It's always like 50, 70 kilometers final glide. If any glider is faster, there is always a situation that at least 5, 6 pilots are in the same altitude in the last lift, and then it's the dash to final. And if we flew JSs which were heavier in Varese, we had no chance. The problem is it's even more complicated because of the wing loading limits. Gliders are designed not the same way. The Ventus and JS have a bigger wing area, maybe a little less smaller maximum lift coefficient, and the bigger lift coefficient for SG29 and the Diana 3 with a smaller wing area. And if you let these gliders to fly with the same wing loading, of course, SG29, Diana 2, they have less chances to win because they are not that fast. It was the difference like 70 in these gliders, so it is a huge difference.
Gotcha. Thanks. Well, let's jump into actually the tactics of trying to fly further and faster.
One more comment about it. When we had a competition in Poland, a Grand Prix in Poland, when we had let the gliders to fly with the maximum wing loading they could, so the 600 kilograms was actual limit for them, they flew the same. The SG29 flew as JS1, but in the competition just a few months before in Varese, when there was a limit of 50 kilograms per square meter, so the SG29 had to reduce the weight a lot, it had no chance. And gotcha. So the choice of the glider for the Grand Prix is important.
I gotcha. I won't put you on the spot and ask you which one you would actually choose.
I have to test it. The best
that's a good answer.
Yeah. I have to test it because I have no idea if the JS1, which has a JS3, which has a slightly smaller wing loading, wing area, with the 48 kilograms per square meter would beat the Diana 3, let's say, or the JS1. Because
It'll
maybe
be fun to see.
It is easy to do. Just take these gliders, fly in a wave, and you will see the difference in 2 minutes in straight flight at 200 kilometers per hour. That's not that difficult.
Gotcha. getting ready for a flight and for a competition, you keep talking about the weather and how important it is. Let's actually jump into that. So what are some of the tools that you use and the things that you look at specifically weather-wise that you feel is giving you an advantage over
And
some of the other pilots?
This is the winds today at Taupo, and this is a very nice weather because this is high resolution. It's only 2 kilometers, and look at this area. It tells you that for the 12 o'clock it was predicted 11 hours ahead, so at 1 o'clock at night. Yeah. What else can we see in here? This is probably the thing that most people would look at, and this is the cross-country speed. This is the easiest way to predict where you should go, starting from, let's see, 10 o'clock. Okay. And it was actually the same pattern in the sky. We flew east initially to get to the better weather there. And the cold front was coming, and no difficulties with flying the task which we planned before the launch. So you see, this was only 6 hours ahead. Yeah, this is very fresh weather forecast. And so after flying to the east, we decided to fly to the north along Kaimai mountains, and we decided to come back. It's not showing very great weather here, and looking on the east coast, it was fantastic. I think the cloud base was like 8,000 to 9,000 feet. We were flying only at 4,000 feet. Here you can get the altitude height above ground, which was actually, you see, this is blue, and when you look at this, it's in the range of 2,000 meters, even more. I think in the later afternoon it will be even higher. So this is actually the weather I use. Yeah.
So you're looking at this before, but are you actually making printouts, or are you doing something that it can overlay on your screen, or just kind of remembering the areas?
I'm kind of remembering what it is, and then we had to come back this way, upwind, and we moved eastwards, and there was an Auscumulus Street, which was probably also predicted at 16 hours. I will move to 16 hour. So this is very, very true weather. So we moved this way along the Taupo lake, and we arrived home. And this was also present when we arrived to Taupo again. Yeah.
So is this the main website that you use, the fcst24.com, or do you use multiple services, or what have you found? No. What do you use?
The best weather we have is from our meteorologist. So looking at this model, sometimes we could make an error, and we have Jan Winarczyk, meteorologist. He is producing the special weather for us, and he draws it on the map, and usually his weather is the best.
Gotcha. Well, as your future teammate, I look forward to start getting those special weather forecasts. So, all right. So next thing is all right. So we've got weather. Is there anything else about weather that you really? I mean, there's so much to still go over. Is there any other key points of weather that you really want to emphasize that pilots should focus on or do, or really pay attention to?
I don't know. It's probably to learn how to read this weather. The sky in the morning, and it's a little different than forecasted. Then you have to apply the some factors and predict it in a slightly different way. But usually we just look at the forecast and we try to apply it directly. One thing is, if you look at the problem is with the thermals themselves. when you look at the pattern of the thermal updraft velocity, it seems that it's very weak already here. And when you look at the thermals plus convergences, it shows the actual weather pattern. There will be probably a cumulus street in this area, also in this area, and not especially good weather in this area. And this is rain here already.
Gotcha. I've seen some pilots recently where they're getting real-time weather in the cockpit when they're racing, and it's overlaid. How do you feel about that?
Say again, please.
So pilots that are receiving real-time weather in the cockpit while they're racing, and they're getting new updates on weather, and they can actually overlay it on their maps, so they can see convergence lines, predictions, things like that. How do you feel about that during the competition?
As I said, today's competition is much different than what we had previously. This information is everywhere, and there are groups of people working on the ground and helping pilots. So they not only tell you where your competitors are, what they are doing, if you cannot see them on your FLARM in the cockpit, but also send you an information about weather radar. You can download it also to your screen in the glider, which is okay, I think. But the information about other competitors also from other classes climbing somewhere, it's probably not the thing that I would like to have in the competition, because we're now flying like a radar, RC models, yeah. Unfortunately, there are some teams that if they have 3 classes, there are 3 people in with different computers, with different radio channels working from 3 groups separately. And so they send information over just dedicated to this particular pilot and maybe a couple of pilots flying. Yeah, so that's a problem. There's just something that was never the only thing that people from the ground would share you, and I think it's still not forbidden to share, was the weather in front. But the position of different pilots, it's something that is new, and I think it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, good point. So let's say that you've got a pilot that's in the top 10 in his nation. So, a pretty good competition pilot. And what advice would you give him to help him to get to be where he's a top 1 to 3 pilot? So they're already pretty good at racing, but what do you tell people to get them to the next level?
Take things seriously. And if you have really a motivation to do it, you will address your weaknesses one by one and learn to fly. For younger pilots, my advice is to fly in the competition, train as many competitions as you can. And there are good examples that it actually works. So we in Poland don't really have a camp for flying and practicing anything. We fly only competitions as a national team. But you should forget about FLARM. Switch it off and make your own decisions. Don't follow any others. And if you can see them, that's fine. But if you can make your own decision and compare if it was right or wrong, with comparison to the best pilots, then you will learn very quickly. If you will just fly the competition and follow others, you will not gain any advantage on it. So the key is to make your own decisions, yeah, and think in when you are flying.
Gotcha. So in competitions where it's getting towards the end, it's getting, there's pretty close. Let's say there's 3 pilots really close, and it's the final day. Are you hoping for a blue day that's difficult? Or are you hoping for a bombastic day that has beautiful clouds and lots of markers? What's the perfect day for you so you can finish off the contest strong?
Not too short. That's the key. if the day is too short, we will not get enough points. So the best scoring is when you have 2.5-hour task, and this is 1,000 points, and the differences in points are biggest. Myself, I prefer clouds, because when you have a blue day, this is only tactical flying, and when you have a cloudy, when you have a clue in the sky where it is, then you can make your own decisions and you can fly by yourself. So we are good in it, and so it's not a problem to fly along and leave anybody else.
Yeah, I think you're basically like every other pilot. Every pilot wants clouds, so it's good to hear that you do too. Speaking of clouds, there are so many ways of looking at them and making decisions and analyzing them. What are some of the things that you look for in clouds as you're planning your course and the next thing you're going to do? And I know that there's so many different types of clouds, but let's just say, a thermal day that have the cumulus clouds. What are some of the keys that you're looking for in the clouds?
I think the difference, how I look, and the way the other people usually look at the cloud is not the all big lift. I see separate cores, even if it is a big one. Usually the strongest core is not bigger than usual, so more or less 300 meters in diameter. And I'm trying to find this best lift in under the cloud. Usually the big one is it merges like 3, 4, 5 separate cores under the cloud base, and you have to plan your way, because sometimes you have to fly in a certain direction under this cloud base. And this is probably the most important difference. And even flying between clouds, I usually pick the route which is under some indicators of lift. It can be very weak, like netto 1 meter per second, so you're cruising and you're not sinking in it. But if you would fly 200 meters left or 200 meters right from it, you would lose altitude, and that's the key, I think. And I'm not afraid to deviate, to change my course of track up to maybe 30 degrees. Sometimes, if you have a good chance to move 3-4 kilometers off track, and then there is a line that you can use, then I do it. It's worth it. Yeah. Sometimes, even if you look at the cloud street and you start your leg deviating only 30 degrees off track, the track error is increasing all the time you progress along this. So in certain moment you have 60 degrees off track, yeah, and then it's the moment that you should come back in the direction where your turn point is.
Gotcha.
But even 60 degrees when you're flying under the cumulus street is fine.
Going back to the visual indicators of that big thermal, what is it that you're actually looking for in the cloud? Is it looking for a dark spot? Is it looking for little wispies underneath? What should pilots be looking for? Where can they see the thermal to help them to find that better core?
All of this is not, it's not a secret, but wisps are different. There's are not moving. This is just dissipating cloud, and if you see condensation which is blown, which is going up into the cloud base quickly, it's a good indicator of the lift. Today we had a nice example of the wet air mass, and in this humid conditions you will have a lot of indicators like this under the cloud base, and they are usually very good, but it's not that sure, because usually there are in uneven cloud bases, and when it's higher you will not see it from behind. Those wisps will obscure the view in front. Sometimes the cloud base just on the other edge is higher, so you have to think all the time which way it's blowing from. And if for example, if the cloud is big, let's say it has a diameter of 2 kilometers and it's going downwind, the hot spot is on the downwind side of the cloud, because it's the place where it was only recently covered with shadow. It's the cloud is moving in this direction. If the cloud is small, it will be on the opposite. It will be on the upwind side. So because it doesn't matter. It was only for 1 minute or few minutes in the shadow in this moment. So, it is a completely different story. Also, the tops are important. When you look at the cloud, the quickly rising top means that this is the place where you should go. Higher cloud bases, darker spot means that there is a top above. Yeah, it is the thickness of the cloud is bigger in this moment. Yeah, so that if you look from outside, you will see this top and under the cloud. But the problem is, which I very often see, that people are not precise enough. They describe where is the best place under the cloud, and just maybe few hundred meters in front of it, they turn.
I do that all the time. I don't know why.
Because and they just skim on the edge of this best looking place, and maybe they don't get any lift, only a sink around it. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, so you have to be very precise. You should not change your course. It's also important. I think in my case it comes also from the sailing, because you have to keep the direction constantly. If you change the course all the time up and down, you're not as good as just keeping the perfect direction and heading to the same point. Yeah?
Gotcha.
So you have to be patient. You have to look up if you're exactly under the. Something is going wrong here. Could you please switch the main power? Thank you. We are back on power. So this is the problem. So usually this is also an upwind side and the sunny edge of the cloud. In our conditions where we fly in Europe, most winds are west to east, maybe north, maybe southwest to northeast, and then we have a sunshine on the left when we're going upwind, and it's very usual that we find on the left edge of the cloud we're looking for the lift. When you change the direction which you are flying, it's sometimes difficult on the first few clouds to hit the core instantly, but then you will learn quickly where it is.
Yeah. Before you actually start the task, do you often try to go out, find a cloud, and get a feel for where the lift is under it, so that way you don't have to spend the time while you're on course? Is that kind of a common thing you do?
This is what you are doing before the start line opening, and you take time to look around, to examine 5-6 clouds before you actually start the task. Maybe you fly a little bit upwind on the first task leg, and try to learn which is the proper place under the cloud when especially when it's windy. Then it can be different. Sometimes, especially winds from the opposite direction than the light, the sun. This is problematic. Sometimes it can confuse everybody.
Right.
Especially flying low, you will be finding lifts in between clouds, so this is a difficult moment.
Gotcha.
Bruno, let me just jump in real quick. One of our top racing pilots here in the U.S. Just asked a question for Sebastian, and that is how much below cloud base must you stay to have a good view ahead?
I think it's around 1,000 feet, 300 meters, but we go to another topics, which is actually a flow, let's call it, which is described in the psychology. It's the rhythm that new tasks are coming to you, and you're able to process them in the proper order. To achieve it, you have to work almost all the time in a glider. So there is no time to rest. When you are already happy with your thermal, then it's the time that you should look around and plan your next route before you get too close to the cloud base. Once you are too high, then you cannot do it anymore. You're not able to see, only maybe the shadow on the ground, but it's not enough. You will not describe the cloud bases. The shadow can be from the altocumulus or something like this. So there's a proper time to do everything, and you have to share this time. You have to work all the time, and also it means you have to plan when you rest. in the glider. When you cannot focus for 5 hours properly, you have to plan also your rest during the flight. For example, you're cruising, you're shedding your tasks to the partner, and what we usually do, it's always the way that somebody is flying in front. Maybe when we are searching for the lift, we are flying wing to wing in the same forward distance, but actually in parallel. We can also tell one is going to the left, the other one is going to the right under this cloud, and then we try to find the best lift. But if we are flying like ducks, one in front and the second one behind, the second pilot, the first one is concentrating on the present tactics, the choice of the perfect place, which way to fly under this cloud, or maybe the next one or 3 clouds in front. And the second one is usually lower, and he has a better view, and he has to plan a little bit more which way actually we want to go on the task. So it is also something that I'm selling again some secrets. I think that the Polish national team is not also aware of this, but I'm trying to do it like this.
Gotcha. So we're talking about the cruise now, and obviously there's Mccreedy theory, and we've been talking about that before this started. A lot of pilots say, there's either flying exact Mccreedy theory, there's speed bands. What do you do when it comes to Mccreedy and your velocity that you're flying based on the conditions of the day?
You have to realize whenever you change the speed, it's a drag, and you have to do it a proper way. The other thing is whenever you have a gust, it increases the energy of the glider, and it would be good to increase the lift coefficient in this moment. We cannot do always as quickly as it's possible, so we usually pull. Maybe not too much, not to slow down, but we pull a little. And applying the Mccreedy, there's nothing better than Mccreedy, but we try to do it wisely. So it means when we are high, we apply it directly. So we fly, not changing the speed too much, but we applied it. If there is a chance that we will get the 3-meter lift in front, then we fly Mccreedy 3-meter and we speed up, to get it. If there is a risk that the lift is not there, we reduce a little bit. Although we think there is a 3-meter lift, we reduce the Mccreedy a little. So extra to the Mccreedy, we have to apply the theory of chances to win. When we fly at lower altitude, we would, of course, reduce the speed. And just to increase the chances that we are not examining only the one cloud ahead, we have a chance to visit 2 or 3 before we get that strong lift. Because if we are flying very fast and the chance is this is the only one cloud in front and we are not going anywhere, if we are unlucky, that's not a good game. This is a very weak chance to win.
So many of the modern,
but it works also. It works also on the other end. For example, we're climbing in a descent lift, and before the final. But if we climb to the top, we're reducing our chances to get a better lift because we don't need any lift more. So I usually would just fly a little bit earlier, and if there is a chance that I will just get extra altitude, or maybe not lose altitude cruising, the best lift, if you can, the strongest lift is when you can fly it straight. If you don't need to stop in it, this is the strongest lift. And then I would rather go a little bit earlier, not having the proper altitude. But it's the point on the final glide when I would not take the risk anymore. Let's say it's if the weather is strong and it's getting to be in the evening already, it would be difficult to find lift low. I would say this is the 800-meter limit. Below it, so it's less than half altitude of the cloud base. I would not risk anymore to be below the final glide.
Okay. So many of the modern computers have an actual Mccreedy, speed to fly, and it's constantly changing based on what it's reading, the air mass is doing, and so the number is going all over the place. Are you actually paying attention to that number, or are you thinking more of just how much do you pay attention to what the instrument says, Mccreedy says at this moment?
I'm used to the constant speed almost all the time, but I'm pulling in the gas and I'm changing my speed differently according to the situation. If you're going on the final glide, I would not slow down. I would just only pull a little. And actually, if there is a lot of lift, then you will accelerate. Yeah, it's opposite because you're getting extra altitude, so you would accelerate on final.
Right.
If you're flying between most probably this is the clearest situation. If you're flying between cumulus streets and you're almost sure 100% that there will be no lift that is usable to thermal in it, you would just pull up a little in the gust and keep the constant speed. And don't change it too much. It would just prevent the glider from increasing the speed in case there's a lift in between. And the third situation is when you are approaching a cloud and you are almost 100% sure that you will find a good lift under this one. So the problem is before the cloud, you usually have to accelerate because there's a lot of sink around it.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the moment I would rather speed up than keep the Mccreedy speed. And there is a first moment that you have horizontal gusts from turbulent air in front of the lift. Maybe I would pull a little, but not that much to slow down really. And then it's the moment when you are already under the cloud base, you expect the lift to come, and then I would pull. And actually you extract more energy from this moment if you're hitting this lift at high speed.
Okay.
The wind shear itself can give you an extra altitude if you use it properly. Vertical wind shear, yeah. And then I slow down. And this is the moment you have to fill the glider with. We can explain it. You pull a stick and you need to feel how much of the vertical acceleration, the glider accelerates up, how much of it is from the pull of the stick actually, and how much is the extra acceleration because you are flying in the lift, which is increasing. And this is the feel of the glider. Glider don't behave the same way. They are different profiles, different CG centers. So sometimes you have to pull harder to obtain the same. Sometimes the glider is almost unstable, so it would be neutral. And if you pull a little, it is already accelerating. So you have to learn in how your glider behaves. For me, the better glider is the unstable one. Because if the glider, like Duo Discus, for example, it has a tendency to lower the nose down in stable glider. So when there is a gust, it's increasing the angle of attack on the wing. It has a tendency to keep it constant, so it's lowering and it's accelerating. So this is the normal glider, and you have to pull it gently to prevent it. Otherwise, you will not feel the increasing lift under your wings if you just let it fly. Yeah. So when you expect the lift to come, you gently pull it, and then you examine the lift. It comes. You should turn in this moment already. This is very important. This is a very important advice. If the lift is increasing, you should already be turning gently in the direction you expect the core of the. Sometimes you have no clue where it is, but you have to turn somehow. And in the moment it is sure that it's increasing strongly, that you feel that air is pushing you up, then you can immediately, in no time, increase the bank angle, and you're hitting the core in the first circle. Yeah, that's. If you hit it in the second turn, you're good. You're still good, yeah. But flying more turns and looking for it, it's not a good thing. Yeah.
Right.
But this
So
is
what?
the way I do it. And the other problem is you have to, for example, if you're under the cloud base, you will be turning to the right. So you have to plan it on the device a little bit to the left from the expected core. So when it's coming, you're actually turning to the right, to the next part of your track. And this is very easy when the lift is not, it's not satisfying for you, then you can just easily accelerate and go on. Once you have started to turn to the opposite direction, then you have to complete it, and maybe it's in the sync.
Gotcha. With Mccreedy theory, if somebody's going to error, would you recommend that they error by flying a little bit too fast or a little bit too slow compared to what the Mccreedy perfect setting would be?
Actually, we usually fly a bit slower. Why is that? Because the polar, which is sitting in the computer, is not perfect. And usually there is a moment where it is not parabolic, it's going down much faster. So we would usually set the Mccreedy to maybe 2 meters per second and not more. So sometimes we fly much better lifts, and it turns out that flying above, let's say, 220 per hour in modern 50-meter class glider is not really going.
All right. So when you're thermaling, now we're back to the thermaling. Obviously thermals are stronger at different altitudes. What helps you to determine that as you're going up, the thermal's getting weaker? How do you determine that it's that the thermal's getting weaker and it's time to go versus you're just maybe not centered? What are some of the tactics that you use so that way you know it's time to leave the thermal versus I need to recenter it?
Usually, where it is really problematic to find the lift, I would stay in it. But whenever you expect that the next lift is stronger than the actual one, then you should move.
Okay,
so it doesn't matter how, in this level, how we fly, it's not really the problem that you're losing time and reducing average lift centering it. It is part of the story, but it's not that true. Usually we're very good in finding thermals on the flying in the World Gliding Championships. Everybody is. So it's not the problem to find a new thermal. No.
Okay. All right. Final glides. So that's, it's the time to get to get to home. Everybody's excited. Many times it's many miles out. You seem to do it better than everybody else. So what are some of the, what's a secret that you can share? I won't tell anybody, but what's the secret that you can share that makes you so successful with final glides? I think
I'm
that's
looking
a
at the sky.
question a lot of people have.
I've already probably explained it, what I do. If there is a chance that I will get an extra lift on the way home, I would lose a little bit earlier. A good example was the competition in Ostrów Wielkopolski, where we left at 800 meters. I think it was like 1,000 meters below the final glide. The sky ahead was not perfect, but there were some lines, almost blue sky with some haze and some indicators, some fractals. Once I have established the position under this line, I decided to go. I didn't slow down too much, and flying at least 150 kilometers an hour, I was able to escape from the group, which stopped in 3-meter thermal, and I think it was like 5 minutes faster. So that's the secret. You use the lifts in front and leave yourself to get something extra on the final glide. That's the secret, probably. It's a gamble, yes, I know, but at certain point, still on high altitude, you can earn something flying just straight.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely worked for you. So, just want to let everybody know we're going to allow people to ask questions. And so, I've done my best to ask questions, but I'm sure that a couple of people are going, "Oh, why don't you ask Sebastian this?" So, there is a way that you can type in questions into the webinar. So, go ahead and start typing your questions if you haven't already. And Dave is going to be moderating that. And I'll ask you a couple more questions to give people a chance to ask them. Sebastian, have you ever considered taking a video camera with you and actually recording an entire task and sharing it with the world, or is that just too personal, too much information? Love to watch you fly.
Personal. Actually, I think it would be something to do and comment it all the time, but it would be a lot to do in the glider. But flying with a trainee, it's actually what you do. So maybe it's not that stupid, but it would be probably a long and boring movie. The secret is that you look at the sky like on the chessboard, and you see the blocks, the chain of connections on the sky, and it's always present there. It's not only when you have a cumulus streets, when it's just a random sky, it has a structure like a honeycomb.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at this, in each direction you will find some lines not more than 30 degrees of your track. So that's what you're playing with, and fly along this track until you find a satisfying thermal. That's easy, actually. And if you are good in it, you may fly longer until you have to stop.
Mm-hmm.
If you're good in choosing the way under the nice-looking clouds, then the other thing is, if you are good in thermaling, then you can take more risk flying low, which also is a sort of advantage, because you don't need to stop too often. You can fly a little bit longer until you need really to stop. And this, the thermal technique in this moment is really important, because, okay, I was not quite it was not the truth telling you that it actually doesn't matter your technique when flying with people that are not that experienced in this competition. Sometimes we had to encourage them to fly beyond their limits, because, for example, they have a limit at 500 meters above the ground and they would not move until they get away higher.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, when I saw the line upwind, I just continue, and I'm flying in it. I'm not losing too much altitude, maybe just sustaining the altitude, but it's enough. And I'm flying until the moment I can stop and climb again in a good thermal. Yeah, that's the difference. If you're confident, if you can find your way low over the ground, that's an advantage. That's a big advantage.
Yeah, I think a lot of pilots think of climbing as a thermaling and then just cruising as cruising. What it sounds like to me
No.
is that you're always thinking during the cruise, how do I
Mhm.
extract a little bit more altitude and climb during the cruise? So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm never stopping job. I always look for the place where I should go. Uh, People have a tendency to neglect small indicators, small clouds. They would just see the big ones and nothing in between. Sometimes there is a nice, fresh cumulus street in between, and you can use it just climbing, cruising. Yeah, and it's obvious for somebody who tried it. And the other one just would fly 500 meters in straight line, and he would lose 500 meters in the same distance. Yeah? So
yeah.
that's the difference. I think it's very important to look at the sky and see the small clouds also. I keep repeating that if you fly under the cloud and you're not losing the altitude, maybe it's very good. But if you would fly 300 meters beside, you would lose 100 meters. So it's a big advantage. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
if
No,
it's
thank
some,
you.
if yeah.
David, let's actually start answering some questions. We've got
Yeah,
about
no,
20 minutes less, and I'm
we'll
sure
jump
people are
into it.
excited.
And what I think we'll do is just to be fair to everyone, Sebastian, there is a ton of questions. We're
Hmm.
not going to be able to get to them all, but there are some, really top U.S. pilots on this webinar right now, which is great because this is kind of really geared towards them. And I know everyone's so happy and grateful that you're doing this. So let me start from the top of the list and work my way down. I'm not going to try to keep them in a category, or if you answered one a little bit already, I'm still going to throw it out there. And we have about 20 minutes left. And then I
Hmm.
know you're probably very tired and would like to get some rest and some food. So
The
starting with
barbecue
what
is almost ready. People are marching all the way. That's we are so shaking because they are going up and down, and I can smell the barbecue.
we will try to make this quick and efficient. So what are the three most important things that you do to make you a winner? And if you can be as specific as you can, we talked about psychology, we talked about tactics, we talked about technique, but if you could pick only three, what are the most important that make you so successful?
I think this is the moment where we actually cross the start line and how you fly. Uh, uh, my advice in this situation, as we have now, my advice it was about they were laughing about it, but my advice is to leave behind the others, finish before them. That's actually the present situation is the way we fly competitions. Unfortunately, this is we're leaving the start line behind others and trying to catch them, and then maybe not finish in front of them, but together. Yeah. Actually, German pilots they were already joking about this advice, but this is actually true. What we should do now. Um, the second thing is not to neglect, find a balance between deviating off track and finding a lift, because it's usually if you want to fly in the upraising currents all the time, you have to deviate from your track, and you should set some limits, and they are reducing once you are flying faster. Then you should not deviate too much. Say it's 20-degree the limit. When you're flying slower, then you start to look around a little bit more, let's say 30-degree. If you have a really big trouble, then you're starting to fly 90-degree on the sides and maybe sometimes even behind. So there should be a balance between the deviation and the strength of the lift that you're looking for. Actually, my proposal for the manufacturers of the flying computers and the software for them was to put this um, in a separate label. If you're flying off track and you have a Mccreedy 2, this label would show you how strong it should be the lift in this direction to be actually better than the 2 meter in straight. That would be good advice also. And the third thing, always try to finish the task. We have the competition scoring system, which in this moment, not like you have in here in Taupo, because I'm flying with some competitors. So we decided that we will shed off the worst result from the competition. In normal competitions, you have not this chance, so you have to be at least average every day. So that's three advices.
Okay, excellent. So this next question is a mouthful, so bear with me here, and I'll try to pare it down. But um, one of the pilots wants to know if you find yourself flying in the run faster, I should say faster in the run than in US than your US competitors. And at what point in the lift band do you find yourself getting more conservative to preserve altitude and increase the chances of reaching that next thermal that's potentially stronger than the average for the day?
That's usually not that easy, but probably 1/3 of the altitude of the cloud base would be the limit usually. But if the area looks weaker ahead, then I would slow down. There are some areas, there are some competitor sites where we would rather be much more careful than usually. It was a Freudenstadt in Germany, and in the southern part, the weather pattern was changing very quickly, and flying with just one cloud base ahead, you had a absolutely different weather. If you had at this moment, if you were at the right altitude, conserving your altitude, you were more careful, your chances were bigger. And sometimes there is a situation that the weather ahead is deteriorating. It's clear, then you would rather be slow down and to stay at the cloud base. But as a general rule, I would say it's 1/3 of the cloud base that I would reduce the speed.
Okay. And would you consider coming to the U.S. and coach? What could we do to twist your arm, bribe you, coerce you to come and do some U.S. performance camp coaching?
Actually, I'm not able to coach. I am able only to consult, and I would gladly fly with young, promising pilots as well. It's gives you much more joy to fly with them because they're making big progress, and you see that they're really taking from you. Yeah.
So does that mean that you would
And the
consider?
other thing is, I think the best way to improve in general would be to fly with instructors, with people that actually teach others. Yeah, that is also a better way of improving the general situation. Uh, the problem now is that it's not like 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago in Poland, that there was a group of 20 people, and if one of them or few of them were not good enough, they were just written off. They were kicked off the course. Yeah. Now in this moment we are trying to pull everybody, and the only thing that instructor is trying to teach the student is that he would not kill himself in flying. Yeah. It's not important if he is perfectly thermaling of perfectly keeping the yaw string in the middle. The only important thing is to fly safely. Yeah, that's and I had an experience with a retired miner in Poland. He was already 60 years old, and he came to fly as a tourist. He told me that he didn't complete the whole course because he had to move to his job when he was 16 years old already. And he finished just before flying solo. I gave the glider to him, and he was flying perfectly. I couldn't say any word because he was perfect in what he was doing. So this is something that gave me to think that really the level of teaching in the previous years was much higher. In this moment, we are not teaching to fly perfectly. We're not just teaching to fly safely.
So would you, if your schedule permits, would you consider an offer to come to the United States and fly with some folks?
It is possible, I think.
Okay.
I flew with some German people. I flew with. This is the first time I flew like this in the competition in New Zealand. It was also a good moment because this year is a special year. We don't have any competition in winter, so I had time to come. Mm, but the year in this season in Europe is it's almost full. We have a competition from April to September. We have 4 international main competitions, starting with the Grand Prix. Stalowa Wola, it's European Gliding Championships. Then we have a second European Gliding Championships, and I would try to attend both of them. And there is a World Gliding Championships in Pavulo in Italy, which I would also like to go, because this is something new. We would probably fly with the allowance for some use of electric power during the competition, and this is a new way of playing them. Sometimes it's the only way to race. In New Zealand, I had an experience to fly on the coast, and there are some gaps in this coast. And with pure glider, it's impossible to cross them. You would land out in the ocean or Tasman Sea. But if you are allowed to use just a little to fly 200-300 meters higher, then you can cross them, and it's a nice task. So there
that kind of that dovetails into another question, which I think I'm guessing you're going to say yes to. Would you consider high performance glider like a JS3 18 meter with FES for top competition? Is that something that you're interested in?
Yes, that's. I don't think the having an FAS or extra weight that you cannot dump because of the batteries is a disadvantage in normal competition, especially in the Grand Prix. I don't think it's. The FAS is probably the blades that are folded along the fuselage are not bigger drag than probably bag wipers on your wing, so it's not really a big disadvantage.
Okay, and here's another interesting question. Let's see. Is there, everyone realizes that how skilled you are, but is there anyone else in particular that you would like to fly with, that you believe may be able to sharpen your skills in a certain area?
I would love to fly with many people, and I think I can't say the names now, but I think it would be nice to fly with the Thierry Delors, for example. Maybe not the people that are flying in a competition, but that try to make record flights. That's a different story. Actually, this is also something that I'm trying to do, except for the gliding championships. I'm trying to explore with the glider, and I already flew in Himalayas, where we had a chance to climb for the first time without the use of engine over Himalaya of Annapurna. I flew in Caucasus, and for the first time also, and for the first time we climbed these mountains without use of engine. Caucasus was much more difficult than Himalayas, but the next step would be to fly in Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan. There are Tian Shan mountains, which are perfect for flying because the cloud base is at more or less 6,000 meters. So you can easily move along above these tops. But the target, which is not secret to anybody, I would like to fly over Antarctica. And there is a transantarctic range of mountains, and this is difficult story, but you could actually fly for a long time because there is no sunset at a certain time.
So instead of a auto launch, it would be a snowmobile launch?
It could be, but in summer you could have temperatures like 15 degree plus, so it's melting now, unfortunately. But on this in Antarctica there is not much rainfall. It's only a few centimeters of snow, so actually you would be taking off from the rocks.
You also mentioned earlier in the webinar that the French team is currently the best organized. And what are they doing specifically that you believe works well?
I think the secret is Eric Napoleon, who is leading. It's not only the team leader, but also he works for the national team in the background. They can organize gliders, they can organize forecasts, they can organize practice in different places. They have resources to send people to have practice. For example, if we have a competition in Preveza, they will 100% be practicing during the Flight Challenge Cup, which is in Preveza in April and May. So also they can organize a big group of pilots. They have a center in Saint-Aubin where they can allow a bigger number of pilots to fly in the same place at the same time, and they can cooperate. They can learn to cooperate with each other. And during the Eric Napoleon is a very good pilot, also a competitor. He won, I think, in the 15-meter class World Gliding Championships, so he knows what is the thing about, and he can organize, help advice, looking at the weather patterns, looking at the situation in the farm and the tracking. So these people, they are not only good pilots, but they have very good background, and this is what makes this team very strong. And they have a large number, big number of flying pilots, so they have where to pick them from. Yeah, so they have a choice of pilots. This is also important to that this is a big country, and also they have a lot of practice because they fly all the year round. In Southern Alps, they can literally fly 12 months a year. The season is very long, and they fly a lot of hours. So they have a good experience. It's not somebody that has only 100 hours and he's trying to find a competition. They have thousands of hours, and usually there are also gliding instructors that would fly for these centers. So they are actually working as glider pilots, yeah, also.
Okay. Well, I know it's 10. It's 28 after the hour, and we promised we'd get you out in an hour and a half. I can see a little salivation coming from your side of your mouth with smelling the barbecue. So I want to get you fed here. Last question, and I think it's appropriate because it has to do with safety. How do you personally balance the safety of the flight with off-field landing, with the sometimes conflicting demands of a competition, especially at the world level?
Unfortunately, we need to take a risk sometimes. If we would not like to accept it, then it would not be possible to fly in an area like Chile. So I accept the risk that I would damage the glider. Unfortunately, I have to do it. And I have a good experience in flying in small fields. So the area where I usually fly is in the Beskid Mountains. And on the Polish side, the fields are very small. On the Czech and Slovakian side, there are big fields, but on our side, the fields are very small. So, but I can land a glider on the field which is maybe 100-meter long, and it's uphill, very steep uphill. We have practiced landing on top of the mountain in Grünau. It's Jeżów Sudecki, near Zielona Góra. And I also practiced I think it's 30% uphill slope in Żernica or Żernica Wyżna in Bieszczady. So that's an advantage. I think usually it's possible to find a place where you can survive the crash and destroy the glider, but the pilot would be okay. Usually it's fine. But it turns out, after all, that it's always the way to get out from these valleys in the mountains, and we don't really need to do it. I never crashed a glider, never, since I'm flying for 30 years now, and it was not such a case. I only collapsed landing gear, but it was on the runway, actually. and a two glider, there are two very similar handles. One is for the air brake, and the second one was for the undercarriage. And I just touched the wrong one on looking out through the window, not looking into the cockpit. I think that it will be changed because the producer of this glider is a new one, and he will just remove all those weaknesses from this glider, so it will be fine now. But it was the only occasion that I had, and I'm happy with it.
Well, on behalf of the glider community in the United States, and I think from around the world, because I think we have people that joined in tonight that are in different parts of the world, I just want to thank you and tell you how much this means to so many people. I know it's a small community. We fly in and we all love this sport so much. We don't have the girls chasing us. We don't have the big money, but man, you are Michael Jordan. You are, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, all the greatest athletes rolled into one, the things that you've accomplished. And it's truly amazing. And you're very humble about it all. And
Thank you very much.
the insights that you shared tonight, and the length and the depth with which you went into the explanations is just greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. Bruno, anything that you want to say before we let Sebastian eat?
Yeah, Sebastian, it was a real pleasure. As I was looking at all the different questions, one thing's clear, and that is you really have inspired a lot of people. There are just tons of questions and people that really are inspired by what you do. So keep it up. Thank you for sharing and being so open with it. And it was a real pleasure spending the evening with you. And
Thank you very much.
Best of success for the rest of the competition.
I think we would have to do it one more time to answer this question. Now I would like to say sorry because of the late time. We were flying today. I'm in the competition, and that was no other way to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. Have a great evening and go eat some good barbecue.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.